A Second Chance at Love. Previous episodes are available in playlist, a link is given in the video description. Episode 15. Roxanne was only able to heave a sigh of relief after the doctor confirmed that Estella was fine. However, as Lucian was still worried, he decided to admit the little girl to the hospital for one night just to be safe. As it was getting late, Roxanne said, "Since Essie is all right, I'll take the kids back to rest first. Call me if you need me." She turned to leave after she finished speaking. However, when she walked past Lucian, the man grabbed her wrist, causing her to draw a sharp breath. "Please examine her too," Lucian said to the doctor. When Roxanne heard that, she rejected it at once. "There's no need for that. I know my condition, not injured, and I just want to go home and rest." Lucian refused to let go of her. Having no choice, the woman walked toward the doctor and rolled up her sleeves, revealing an abrasion on her wrist which Lucian was grabbing a moment ago. She had sustained a scrape from pulling Estella back clear on, but did not want the little ones to worry about her. Besides, she was intending to treat the wound herself after getting back. She had been bearing with the pain and did not expect the man to notice it. Lucian's expression darkened when he saw the abrasion on Roxanne's wrist. Archie and Benny were even more worried as they exclaimed, "Mommy, you're injured." Roxanne flashed a comforting smile at the children while replying, "It's just a scrape. I'm all right." After the doctor treated Roxanne's wound briefly, the group of them left the emergency ward. Caden proceeded to settle the admission procedures for Estella. As Roxanne was still worried about the little girl, she headed to the ward with Lucian. After Estella was placed on the bed, she woke up and turned around slowly. Archie and Benny were the first ones to notice it. They rushed to the bed at once. Looking at her excitedly, they exclaimed, "You're awake. Are you okay? Are you feeling unwell?" Estella was still feeling groggy. She blinked a few times before she looked at the boys and shook her head. Even though the two boys sensed something amiss, they ignored the feeling, as they were just too happy that Estella was awake. They continued talking to her by the bed. Roxanne watched from the side for a while before stepping forward to caress Estella's face. Estella responded with a smile while reaching out to touch the bandage on the woman's wrist. Noticing the worried expression on the little girl's face, Roxanne said comfortingly, "It's just a scrape. It doesn't hurt at all." After saying that, she asked in concern, "Essie, are you hungry? What do you feel like having? I'll get you something to eat." Estella tilted her head and thought for a moment before shaking her head. Then Roxanne's gaze darkened. She turned around to look at Lucian. Lucian had a grim expression on his face as well as he looked at Estella. Both of them realized that the girl had not spoken a single word since she woke up. Although Roxanne and the two boys had been talking to her, she did not reply. Obviously, the incident had affected her. "It's getting late. You guys should go back first," Lucian said. Roxanne hesitated as a crease appeared between her brows. She had intended to take the two boys home before knowing about Estella's condition. However, after being aware of the situation, she found it difficult to leave. When Estella heard her father asking Roxanne to leave, she grabbed the corner of the woman's shirt with a reluctant expression on her face. Meanwhile, having been chased away by Lucian in the afternoon, Aubrey arrived at the Farwell residence to look for Sonia. Sonia thought that there was news of Estella when she saw her and asked anxiously. "Why are you back? Has Essie been found?" Aubrey shook her head dejectedly. Sonia chided, "Why are you here if Essie hasn't been found? Why aren't you helping to search for her?" Even though she had always favored Aubrey, the woman had indeed gone overboard this time. Aubrey answered remorsefully, "Mrs. Farwell, I'd love to help, but what?" Sonia asked furiously. Aubrey looked at Sonia with teary eyes, and with a pitiful expression, she replied, "But Lucian blamed me for not taking good care of Essie and asked me to leave. I didn't want to stay and be a burden to him because he was already anxious enough." In fact, Sonia had only heard about the incident from Aubrey briefly over the phone. Learning that Estella had run out because Aubrey did not take good care of her. However, she did not know much about the details. As such, she did not understand why her son would flare up at Aubrey because of that. What exactly happened? Why did Essie suddenly run away? Aubrey looked down and sounded as if she was on the verge of bursting into tears as she replied. "When I reached the hotel, I found out that Lucian and Roxanne were staying in the same room as there were not enough rooms. I'll stay here with you." Roxanne held the girl's hand. Then she turned to Lucian and said, "I'll stay here and accompany Essie. She should be hungry. Can you get someone to bring her some food?" Lucian agreed and instructed Caden to get something for all of them to eat. "I wanted to check if the hotel could make any alternate arrangements." The woman paused and glanced up briefly to look at Sonia's reaction before lowering her head and continuing. "So I told him that I would check with the reception if there were any rooms that were freed up. After I entered the elevator, Essie suddenly followed me inside. I had no idea what she wanted and did not expect her to dash out of the elevator the moment the doors opened. I was stunned for a moment and wasn't able to react in time." Sonia's expressing on darkened. She had guessed that her granddaughter did not want to leave Roxanne. What spell did that woman cast on Essie? Even if they are mother and daughter, Roxanne has not taken care of Essie ever since she was born. Why is Essie so attached to her? Besides, when Sonia recalled Aubrey's words from before, she furrowed her brows and asked, "Lucian and Roxanne are staying in the same room?" Aubrey nodded, looking aggrieved, and replied, "There wasn't anything I could say since the hotel didn't have any spare rooms, but it wasn't very appropriate for them to stay together. That's why I wanted to check with the front desk if it was possible to make alternate arrangements. I didn't expect Essie to be so mad over that. It's my fault for my lack of consideration." Sonia invited Aubrey into the living room and said with a grim expression, "It's not your fault. You did the right thing. The two of you are getting engaged soon. Lucian shouldn't have stayed with Roxanne in the same room. But if that did not happen, Essie wouldn't have run away," Aubrey said between tears. "It's already so late and there still isn't any news yet. I'm really worried that something would happen to Essie. She's still so young. If something bad happens to her, I will never be able to forgive myself." At the mention of her granddaughter, Sonia felt her heart sink. However, instead of blaming Aubrey for it like before, she started comforting the woman instead. "Don't worry. Lucian is looking for her. Essie will be fine." Aubrey sobbed while replying, Essie is missing because I didn't take good care of her. I'm scared that Lucian wouldn't forgive me for that. He was so furious earlier on that I thought, she had thought that Lucian would hit her, just like before, but the man did not. However, Aubrey did not assume that it was because he wasn't as angry as before. Instead, she knew that it was probably because he could no longer be bothered with her. Sonia frowned and replied, "That won't happen. It's not even your fault this time. He'll realize it after he calms down. I did not take care of her." After the meal, Lucian told Caden to send Archie and Benny back home to rest while he stayed in the ward with Roxanne so they could both keep Estella company. Roxanne couldn't bear to leave the little girl alone in the ward. Estella was still afraid and refused to release her grip on the corner of Roxanne's clothes. Roxanne felt guilty at the sight of Estella's pale face. She caressed Estella's cheek and apologized, "I shouldn't have rejected you this afternoon. I'm really sorry." Estella shook her head silently. The guilt in Roxanne's heart remained, and she looked downcast. Regret had overwhelmed her when she learned of Estella's disappearance. Now that she knew that Estella was emotionally affected by the incident, she got so heavy-hearted that she could barely breathe. "It has nothing to do with you." Lucian's brows knitted together when he heard her blaming herself. Roxanne forced out a smile and glanced at him without a word. She had experienced losing her child, so there was no way Lucian could understand her feelings. As she didn't seem reassured by his words, Lucian fell silent for a few moments before saying, "If you say so, then it's all my fault." Hearing that, Roxanne shot him a confused look. Estella pursed her lips and glared at Lucian. Lucian met their gazes solemnly and walked toward the bed. He stopped beside Estella and said, "I should have stopped Essie in time. It was my fault, I didn't take good care of her." Seemingly displeased, Estella whipped her head away. Her cheeks were puffed up, and she refused to meet his gaze. Lucian's brows snapped together. "I knew Essie was upset. I should have said no to Aubrey's suggestion. If I had done that, Essie wouldn't have run away recklessly." He knew Estella hated Aubrey but didn't reject her advance, so it was his fault. Estella whipped her head around and shot him a satisfied look. It was clear to Roxanne that he was trying to console her, and she had to admit that he should be shouldering most of the responsibility. Estella was his daughter, but he had failed to take care of her and had caused her to suffer. Recalling Lucian's negligence when he took care of Estella previously, Roxanne felt that he was indeed a careless father. "I wonder how much Essie has suffered over the years." Lucian didn't know what she was thinking. He heaved a sigh of relief when he noticed her guilty expression fading a little. Before he could say anything else to divert their attention, his phone rang suddenly. He glanced at his phone and saw that it was a call from his mother. A deep line appeared in the middle of Lucian's brow as he answered the call. "How's Essie doing?" Sonia asked anxiously. After learning that Estella had been admitted to the hospital, she wanted to visit Estella and also defend Aubrey. Glancing at the bed, Lucian responded, "She has regained consciousness. She's fine, so you should go to bed. I'll bring her back home tomorrow morning." Sonia was about to insist when Lucian added, "Essie is traumatized. She needs to sleep now. You should leave her to rest." Sonia had no choice but to cave in. After the call ended, Roxanne and Lucian stopped talking about Estella's disappearance as if they had reached a tacit agreement. Roxanne started chatting with Estella gently. Alas, no matter what Roxanne said, Estella refused to say a word and would only nod or shake her head. Roxanne was exhausted by the time she managed to put Estella to bed after reading the little girl a bedtime story. Estella gripped the corner of her clothes and refused to let go, so Roxanne got herself a chair and fell asleep on the edge of the bed. Recuperate back at home. The following day, Roxanne woke up and realized there was a coat draped over her body. Lucian had placed his coat over her after she fell asleep last night. Roxanne sat up and glanced around the ward, but Lucian was nowhere to be seen. Strangely, she felt empty inside. Roxanne was in a daze when the door to the ward was opened. Turning at her shoulder, she saw Lucian tiptoeing in, wearing nothing but a shirt. He looked really worn out. When their gazes met, Lucian's gaze turned dark. His voice was hoarse as he asked, "You're up?" Roxanne nodded in response. After a brief hesitation, she got up and placed the coat over Estella. The little girl was still sleeping soundly. Lucian's gaze softened when he saw what she did. He went up to her and glanced at her bandaged wrist. "How are you feeling? Do you need to redress your wound?" he asked with concern. Roxanne shook her head calmly. "No need for that. I can change it myself at home. The medicine in the hospital could be more inefficient than my own medicine." As she sounded confident, Lucian arched a brow. He then recalled her job and previous experience before giving her a non-committal nod. After that, an awkward silence ensued in the ward. "If there's nothing else," Roxanne was about to bid him goodbye when Estella's soft voice rang out. "Ms. Jarvis," the little girl sounded as though she was on the verge of breaking into tears. An instant heartache overcame Roxanne as she turned around hastily to look at Estella. Perhaps Estella had dreamed of last night's event, for tears were streaming down her cheeks even though she was still asleep. Her little face was all scrunched up pitifully. "I'm here," Roxanne assured her as she carefully wiped the tears away from Estella's cheeks. Estella woke up crying. At the sight of Roxanne sitting beside her, she leaped into Roxanne's arms and started sobbing. Her sobs were muffled compared to her sobs back when she was trapped in the hole. However, Roxanne still felt her heart clench at her pitiful whimpers. She must be so scared to wake up from a nightmare this morning. Roxanne comforted Estella for a long time before the little girl quashed her sobs. Her eyes were red as she stared at Roxanne wordlessly. Lucian's expression had turned dark when he heard Estella calling Roxanne in her sleep a while ago. After chatting with Estella briefly, Lucian summoned the doctor to check her condition. The doctor confirmed she was all right, and Lucian left to handle the discharge procedures. Outside the hospital, Estella held Roxanne's hand. She couldn't bear to part with her. Roxanne patted her head. "You should recuperate back at home. Just give me a call whenever you miss me, all right?" Estella nodded, but she showed no signs of wanting to release Roxanne's hand. Roxanne couldn't bring herself to ask Estella to release her hand. Estella was traumatized by yesterday's events, so she wanted nothing more than to shower her love on Estella. Seeing how stubborn Estella was, Lucian felt heartbroken. He knew Roxanne couldn't keep Estella company forever, so he bent down and took Estella's wrist. "Essie, let go of Ms. Jarvis. We need to head back home. Your grandpa and grandma are worried about you. Pursing her lips, Estella released her grip on Roxanne's hand reluctantly. Roxanne was slightly distracted. Essie looks disappointed. She had the same disappointed expression when I rejected her last afternoon. Ms. Jarvis, goodbye. Estella bade goodbye to Roxanne softly with her head hung low. Roxanne was taken aback. This was the first time Estella had spoken out loud since last night, except for the words that she had mumbled in her sleep earlier. She spoke out loud to bid me goodbye. Roxanne felt her heart turn soft. Flashing a smile, she bade Estella goodbye and left in a hurry. She was afraid she would be reluctant to leave if she were to spare Estella another look. Your attitude. Lucian brought Estella back to the Farwell residence after Roxanne left. When they arrived, Sonia and Elias were already waiting in the living room. Aubrey was sitting beside them with a woeful expression. Seeing them, Aubrey immediately got to her feet to welcome them. Lucian, is Essie all right? She then got down on her knees to check on Estella's condition. Estella retreated and hid behind Lucian. She grabbed the edge of Lucian's shirt and refused to look at Aubrey. Aubrey remained patient and reached out to take Estella's hand. Essie, I'm really sorry for upsetting you. I was just... Slap. Estella slapped her hand away abruptly. I hate this evil Ms. Pearson. She's the reason Ms. Jarvis stays away from me. Aubrey refused to give up yet. She came closer to Estella as Sonia and Elias were watching her actions. I can't let Essie show them that we're not close to each other. She stretched her hand out again. Essie, don't be afraid. I just want to check on your injury. Without waiting for a reply, she grabbed Estella's hand to pull her closer. Flustered, Estella burst into noisy tears. Everyone stared at them. Lucian had no idea that Estella hated Aubrey this much. He also didn't know that Aubrey was bold enough to come close to Estella despite knowing that Estella hated her. His expression turned as dark as thunder when he saw Estella crying and shaking uncontrollably. He immediately demanded, "Aren't you going to get lost?" Shocked, Aubrey released her grasp on Estella. Displeasure rose in her heart when she realized tears were streaming down Estella's cheeks. However, she acted as though she felt guilty and said, "It was all my fault. I knew Essie hadn't forgiven me, but I was worried about her. I should have considered her feelings." Having said that, she shot Lucian a cautious look. "I'm really sorry. I had no idea Essie hated me to this extent. It was all my fault. I should leave lest I affect her emotions." Turning to Sonia, she said, "Mrs. Farwell, I'll take my leave now. I'll be back to visit Essie another day." "Lucian, what are you doing?" Sonia had seen how her son had lashed out at Aubrey and how Aubrey had apologized to Estella repeatedly. She felt bad for Aubrey and pulled the latter away. Patting Aubrey's hand, she said, "Stay right here. I know you mean well." Aubrey's lashes trembled as she came back to stand beside Sonia. She looked as though she was close to tears. Sonia glared at Lucian. Aubrey has been blaming herself for Essie's disappearance. She didn't sleep the whole night and kept us company. Now that she's apologizing to Essie, how could you treat her this way? Lucian frowned as his gaze turned wintry. She should be blaming herself. If Aubrey hadn't made Essie angry and had taken good care of her, Essie wouldn't have run away and suffered badly. Lucian's gaze turned colder when he thought of the injuries Roxanne and Estella had sustained last night. Making it up. As he kept blaming Aubrey, Sonia scowled in displeasure. Aubrey feels guilty over her actions. She came back to apologize to us last night. How could you be this harsh to her? She then glanced at Estella, who was hiding behind Lucian. Estella was sobbing silently. Feeling bad for her, Sonia urged softly, "Essie, stop crying. Tell me, did you get hurt?" Estella adored her grandmother, so she nodded wordlessly in response to Sonia's question. "If you knew where we found Essie, you wouldn't have asked her that." Lucian pinned Sonia with a withering look. Sonia was baffled. They only got to talk on the phone hastily yesterday, so she didn't get to ask about the details. Lucian shot Aubrey an icy look and said, "Essie ran into the mountains near the botanical garden and fell into a hole. There was where we found her. She was there the whole night. Do you seriously think she didn't get hurt?" His words were meant for both Sonia and Aubrey. He hoped Aubrey would leave tactfully after hearing what he had to say. Sonia blanched in horror after hearing what Estella had gone through. She bent down and pulled Estella into her arms. "Oh, you must have suffered a lot, Essie. Let me give you a hug. Don't wander off in the future, okay?" Estella allowed Sonia to hug her but couldn't stop sobbing no matter how Sonia consoled her. After a while, Sonia noticed Aubrey was near to tears. Feeling sorry for Aubrey, she said, "Aubrey means well. She wanted to change to a bigger room for you and Essie. She didn't know that Essie would get this upset. Now that Essie is safe and sound, you should stop blaming her." Lucian's brows knitted together, and he said not a word. "Besides, Aubrey told me you were with that woman. What is going on? You're getting engaged soon. Everyone in Harrington knows that you're getting engaged to Aubrey. What if words get out? How do you think Aubrey will feel?" As her son seemed unfazed, Sonia felt her heart sink. "Don't tell me you're planning on marrying Roxanne? I've made myself clear. I won't accept her, ever. She has to bear some sort of responsibility over Essie's disappearance, too." Right after she said that, she felt Estella's chest heaving in her arms. Sonia shot Estella a worried look. The little girl was crying until she was gasping for air. She was also struggling to free herself from Sonia's embrace. It was pretty apparent that the little girl was upset that Sonia had chided Roxanne. Comprehension dawned, and Sonia scowled unhappily. "I don't know what's so great about her. Why does Essie love her so much? She can't even bear to hear me chiding her. If she knew what had happened, I wonder if she'll still feel the same way. If Essie was an adult, I would have told her how Roxanne had dumped her when she was a kid." Realizing Sonia intended to spill the truth, Lucian cut in, "This has nothing to do with Roxanne. If Roxanne hadn't entered the mountains late at night to search for Essie, she would have had to spend the night in the mountains." That didn't occur to Sonia, and she was struck silent. A few seconds later, she said grudgingly, "She ought to do that. Roxanne abandoned Essie when she was just a baby. She's just making it up to Essie. I waited for years. After learning that it was Roxanne who had found Estella, Sonia stopped reprimanding her. She focused on consoling Estella, who was still crying in her arms. A while later, Estella exhausted her energy and finally stopped crying. Good girl, Essie. Sonia patted her back. Miss Pearson adores you. She accidentally angered you, so can you forgive her? Hearing Aubrey's name, Estella scrunched up her brow and turned around. She stretched her hands toward Lucian. Lucian picked her up and answered on her behalf. Essie refuses to forgive her. Even if Essie does forgive her, I will never forgive her. With that said, Lucian glared at Aubrey. This has dragged on for long enough. I shall make myself clear once again. I will never marry you. From today onward, we no longer have anything to do with each other. You have no reason to show up before Essie anymore. His words stunned everyone else. It took Sonia a few seconds to regain her composure. She grabbed Lucian's arm and demanded, Lucian, do you know what you're talking about? News about your engagement has been released. How are we going to face the public if you refuse to marry Aubrey? Without batting an eyelid, Lucian responded, that has nothing to do with me. It was you who released the news without seeking my agreement. I've stated my disapproval, but you insisted on doing so. Sonia's face turned ugly. Lucian had obviously made up his mind. She knew what her son wanted but had always assumed she had control over him. Alas, she forgot he was all grown up now. In fact, he was in charge of Farwell Group now. He was obedient all the while only because he wanted to be a filial son to her. But, Sonia trailed off before coming up with another excuse. But we agreed to your marriage to repay old Mr. Pearson's favor. How are you going to explain to him if you want to call it off? Lucian furrowed his brows. We've repaid the Pearson family's favor by giving them what they wanted all these years. That's enough. Farwell Group will still help the Pearson family in the corporate world as long as they don't break the law. Aubrey gaped in disbelief. It was pretty clear that Lucian had come up with that plan a long time ago. When did he start scheming? Was it after he rejected me previously? Or did he start after that Roxanne came back? She was panicking when Lucian glanced at her, his face devoid of expression. Miss Pearson, please leave my house if you have nothing else to say. Aubrey froze in shock. She promptly apologized, Lucian, I was wrong. I know my mistake now. I promise I'll give Essie what she wants. It won't happen again. Please don't be mad at me. Nevertheless, Lucian ignored her pleas. Aubrey's heart sank in dejection. She tried to grab his sleeves, but he avoided her grasp. I've waited for you many years, Lucian. Aubrey's hands froze mid-air. I'll change. I promise I will. Please don't do this to me. As Lucian remained silent, she shot Sonia a beseeching look. Sonia shook her head grimly. You should head back home for now. Lucian didn't show any signs of fury, but she knew that was precisely the sign he was smoking with anger. Besides, it seemed that he had thought about it thoroughly before informing them of his decision. It was useless to say anything now, so she wanted to wait until he calmed down. I will take you there. Lucian was resolute. Aubrey had no choice but to leave with her head hung low. Elias and Sonia stayed back for a while to spend time with Estella. No matter how hard they tried, Estella remained disinterested. The little girl refused to write any words even though Sonia gave her a pen and paper. She would only nod or shake her head at any questions they posed. Sonia felt bad for Estella, as she knew the little girl was traumatized by last night's events. The only thing she could do was to spend more time with Estella. When night arrived, Sonia got to her feet reluctantly. "Should I bring Essie back so I can take care of her? You're busy, and I'm afraid you can't take care of her well." Lucian rejected her offer outright. "No, thanks." After what happened last night, he refused to let Estella go anywhere. As he refused to give in, Sonia said nothing else. She talked to Estella briefly before leaving with her husband. After they left, Lucian redressed Estella's wound and led her upstairs so she could go to bed. Estella stared at her wound silently and showed no response to his words. Frowning, Lucas asked, "Does your wound hurt?" Estella lifted her head and shook her head. "What's wrong? Tell me," Lucian said patiently. Pursing her lips, Estella pointed at the medicine on the table and took the pen to write Ms. Jarvis on the paper. Her action tugged at Lucian's heartstrings. "Do you want to give the medicine to Ms. Jarvis?" Estella bobbed her head firmly. "The medicine in our house is efficient. Ms. Jarvis suffers from the same injury as mine, so she should be able to use the same medicine I just used. I miss her so much." Lucian glanced at the time and ruffled her hair. "It's late. Ms. Jarvis must be asleep. We'll pay her a visit tomorrow, okay?" Estella hesitated before nodding obediently. "Ms. Jarvis must be tired, as she had to search for me. She needs to rest." Seeing that Estella didn't press on, Lucian heaved a sigh of relief and led her upstairs so she could go to bed. Lucian still remembered how afraid she was this morning. Thus, he decided to spend the night with her. He was exhausted from staying up all night and promptly fell asleep after coaxing Estella to sleep. The next morning, Estella woke him up by shaking his body repeatedly. Opening his eyes groggily, he saw that Estella had already changed her outfit and was waiting for him to leave. It took him a while before he realized Estella wanted to leave right away to give Roxanne the medicine. "Okay. I'll take you there," Lucian promised her solemnly. Climbing out of bed, he washed up and brought her downstairs. Downstairs, Estella ran to the medical kit and found the medicine she had used last night. She placed the medicine beside her when she was having breakfast so they could leave after breakfast. Lucian sighed when he saw her action. Perhaps this is their mother and daughter bond. They are both worried about each other. "I'm worried about Roxanne, too." Those who had no idea what happened to her might think she was seriously wounded judging from Essie's reaction. Applying medicine. Archie and Benny had already gotten up when Roxanne arrived home. They promptly asked about Estella. The boys were delighted to learn that Estella could talk again. As Roxanne's wrist was injured, the boys refused to let her do anything and stayed by her side the entire day. The following day, Roxanne wanted to head to work at the research institute, but the boys insisted that she stay at home. "Mommy, you're hurt. You should rest at home." Benny shot her an imploring look. Archie chimed in, "We're afraid you'll fall ill, just like last time. They could still remember how they had freaked out when Roxanne got sick previously. Roxanne knew the kids were worried about her. As her wrist was hurt, it would be difficult for her to work. Hence, she bobbed her head in agreement. After breakfast, the doorbell rang. Roxanne got to her feet and answered the door. She was taken aback by the unexpected visitors. "Why are you here?" Clad in a casual coat, Lucian held Estella's hand. Estella was holding an exquisite bag with something inside. Hearing her question, Lucian nodded and gestured to Essie. "Essie is worried and wants to deliver medicine to you." Estella offered the bag she brought with her to Roxanne, affirming her father's words. "Ms. Jarvis, medicine." Lucian was used to how fond Estella was of Roxanne, so he wasn't surprised to hear her talk. Roxanne's heart melted when she heard Estella's adorable voice. She took the bag from the girl and patted her head. "Thank you, Essie." Flashing an obedient smile, Estella stared at the house earnestly. Roxanne hesitated briefly before turning sideways to let them in. Archie and Benny were playing with search Lego blocks on the floor after breakfast. They were delighted to see Estella and invited her to join them. "When Essie used to stay with us, we loved playing with search Lego blocks. Perhaps she'll forget what happened yesterday if we play together." However, Estella shook her head and stared fixedly at Roxanne. Roxanne didn't know what the little girl wanted, so she bent her body down, utterly baffled. "Essie, what do you want me to do?" Estella touched her injured wrist carefully as a flash of concern appeared in her eyes. Comprehension dawned on Roxanne. "It turns out Essie is worried about my injury. It's not serious. The doctor has already dressed my wound," Roxanne assured her cheerfully. However, Estella took the corner of her outfit and pulled her toward the couch. Roxanne played along with her and sat down on the couch. After she took a seat, Estella stretched her hand out. "Change the dressing." Having said that, she took a bottle of medicine out of the bag Roxanne had placed on the coffee table a while ago. Roxanne was momentarily stunned. Feeling touched, she gave her hand to Estella willingly. After removing her bandage carefully, Estella pouted unhappily at the sight of her wound before blowing on it twice. Roxanne chuckled. "Essie, are you going to apply the medicine for me?" "It's fine. It might hurt for children, but adults won't feel anything. Just apply the medicine for me." "Tell me why." Hearing that, Estella started applying the medicine to Roxanne's wound meticulously. Beside them, Lucian said, "After I redressed her wound last night, she wanted to bring the medicine to you. If I hadn't stopped her, she would have come last night." The little girl's gesture moved Roxanne. Glancing at Estella, who was bandaging her wrist, she said gratefully, "Thank you, Essie." Estella lifted her head and flashed a faint smile. Archie and Benny watched as Estella applied the medicine to Roxanne's wrist. They were about to speak, but Lucian's stern voice caused them to frown in displeasure. After Estella went missing yesterday, they got so worried and didn't bother expressing their emotions to Lucian. Now that Estella was safe and sound, Archie and Benny felt that her disappearance was somewhat his fault. He knew Essie hated that evil woman but allowed her to get close to Essie. Mommy didn't bring Essie with her as the woman was there. That bad woman also bullied Mommy previously. It was all your fault. With that thought in mind, the boys didn't bother being nice to Lucian. Sensing the strange ambience, Lucian lowered his head and saw the boys glaring at him as though he were a ferocious beast. The boys pouted when they realized he was looking at them. "Mr. Farwell, you brought Essie here to deliver the medicine to Mommy. The medicine is here, and Essie has applied it to Mommy's wound. Is that all?" Lucian's brows snapped together as he let out a noncommittal grunt. "Please leave now." Archie and Benny lifted their heads to look at Lucian, as he was taller than them. Despite their young age, they looked intimidating. That was the first time Lucian had ever been asked to leave by the kids. His brows twitched, but he said nothing. "I could be imagining it, but the boys seem incredibly hostile today, even though they are usually hostile to me." Hearing their rude demand, Roxanne turned at her shoulder and told them, "Archie, Benny, don't be rude." The boys huffed, "We're being polite." "We said, please." Roxanne felt her head throbbing, as she didn't know they would retort her words. Lucian asked, "Are you kicking me out?" Archie and Benny nodded vehemently. Instead of flying into a rage, Lucian added patiently, "Can I know why?" The boys were taken aback by his question. They shared a look before Archie answered, "Because you're going to marry another woman soon. If you spend too much time with Mommy, it may cause an unwanted misunderstanding. We don't want Mommy to suffer any more." Silence ensued in the living room following his words. Lucian swept his gaze over Archie and Benny before his gaze landed on Roxanne, who was sitting on the couch. "Something must have happened without my knowledge for the boys to say that to me. Did Aubrey cause trouble for her? Why are the boys this emotional about my marriage?" Sensing his gaze, Roxanne looked down to hide the anxiety in her eyes. She had no idea why Archie and Benny resented Lucian this much. Their reaction was bigger than hers when they learned of Lucian and Aubrey's marriage. Is it because he's their father? Is this why he is this important to them? A clean break, you guys are right. All right, then. I'll get going first. See you all, Lucian said after a pause, pursing his lips. Since he had unilaterally called off his engagement with Aubrey, and the news was not made public yet, Lucian thought he should only let them know later. Archie and Benny were surprised and disappointed when Lucian actually agreed so readily. So, he's really getting married to that woman? Does this mean he doesn't want us anymore? The disgruntlement evoked by this thought was apparent on the children's faces, and they replied curtly, "Goodbye, Mr. Farwell." Lucian was puzzled by their sudden change of attitude. The man wondered if he had done anything wrong to upset them, aside from his engagement with Aubrey. Earlier on, he had found Archie and Benny strangely distant, so he had decided to leave them alone. Yet when he actually did so, the two boys suddenly seemed disturbed by his departure. Seriously? What's the matter? I can't think of a reason for their behavior. Lucian eventually gave up on trying to explain their shift in attitude and reached for Estella's hand instead. But when the girl saw Lucian nearing, she frowned and leaped to the ground from the couch. The girl had been listening to their conversation all that while, so she knew Lucian was about to bring her home. The man looked at his daughter, who had just dashed off about 3 meters away from him, in resignation. I should have expected that. Essie is so clingy to Roxanne, so there's no way she wants to leave. Besides, she's still traumatized by what happened. I bet sending the medication here today is just an excuse for her to come see Roxanne. Come on, Essie. It's time to go home. We'll come to see Ms. Jarvis some other day, Lucian coaxed with his gaze still pinned on the girl. He had learned from the incident yesterday that he should not be too hard on her, or else she might end up doing something rash again. Yet despite his gentle entreaties, the girl still refused to go with him. No, she cried out stubbornly. I want to stay with Ms. Jarvis. She's the best. To the little girl, Roxanne was the person she could depend on because the woman had saved her from the pit when she was crying in desperation. If I have to have a mommy, it must be Ms. Jarvis. I don't want anyone else to be my mommy. As Lucian guessed, it was all because of Roxanne. Ever since Estella met Roxanne, she had constantly reminded Lucian of Roxanne's importance in her heart. In fact, it seemed to him that Roxanne meant much more to the girl compared to himself, her very own father who had taken care of her for so many years. When Archie and Benny saw this, they felt sorry for Estella. They knew she was behaving like that because of what had happened the other day. Yet the brothers could not invite her to stay because Roxanne had yet to utter a word. It was then that they regretted chasing Lucian off. If they had not rushed him off, Estella could have stayed longer. For a moment, the ambience in the quiet living room became awkwardly tense, with Lucian and Estella reaching an impasse. Essie, I still have to go to work tomorrow. What about I send you to Grandpa and Grandma? Lucian suggested tenderly, rubbing his brows. Again, his proposal was met with an outright rejection as Estella ran over to Roxanne and clung to her hand. She was trying to show with her actions that she wanted to stay with her. Her sudden embrace softened Roxanne's heart. Yet when Roxanne looked back at Lucian again, she told herself she had to let the girl go. As Archie and Benny said, he will be engaged to another woman soon. I should stay away from him. It's time we have a clean break. Do not waste time, no. I want Ms. Jarvis, the girl implored, staring at Roxanne with her eyes wide open before glaring at Lucian. Judging from how intractable the girl was, Lucian was certain that she would not follow him home. So he eventually gave in and turned to Roxanne instead. When Roxanne met his eyes, a frown stitched on her brows, for she knew what he was about to say. You see, Essie really likes being around you. To be honest, she is much better when she's with you. Her condition deteriorated because of what happened yesterday, so I was wondering if you could take care of her for a while since she wants to stay by your side, he asked earnestly with his gaze directed at the woman on the couch. His words lit up Estella's eyes. When she heard that her father had relented, she gazed at Roxanne with anticipation glistening in her eyes as she waited for her answer. But the excitement in her eyes slowly faded when she spotted the reluctance on Roxanne's face after a few seconds of silence. Her heart sank, yet she still looked at Roxanne importunately. She refused to believe Roxanne would turn her down. Roxanne looked at the girl apologetically, caressing her hair. I'm so sorry, but I have a lot to do these few days. I have been putting aside a project my professor assigned to me for personal reasons, so I really have to get back to the research institute tomorrow. I'll have to stay back to make up for the lost time, so I won't even have time to take care of Archie and Benny. Roxanne did not say explicitly that she did not have time for Estella and that she had to turn the girl down, but what she said amounted to a rejection. Estella was dejected. Lucian frowned and looked at the girl helplessly. As you said, what Essie needs now is someone who can take good care of her, and that is not something I can promise. Keeping her here will only hinder her recovery, so, Mr. Farwell, I guess you know what's best for her, Roxanne continued. Although what she said was true, it was partially an excuse for her to convince Lucian to bring the girl home. She genuinely hoped that Estella could bounce back from her sickness, and to do that, professional intervention by professional psychologists was imperative. Lucian could not think of anything else he could say to help Estella. He pursed his lips, looking at the girl. Well, I guess you have to say goodbye to Ms. Jarvis, then, Essie. Estella could not believe what Roxanne had just said. Her teary eyes were opened wide in disbelief as she pinned her gaze on the woman and held on to the hem of her shirt. Roxanne quickly looked away. It pained her to see the girl in such a state. She knew she could not bring herself to say no to the girl if she maintained eye contact. Ms. Jarvis, Estella's voice quivered, but Roxanne hardened her heart and refused to turn back. Archie and Benny felt so wretched when they saw how desperate Estella was. Mommy, why don't we just let Essie stay? She looks so. Aunt Madeline will be taking care of both of you these 2 days, so make sure you guys behave, Roxanne interrupted, trying to prove her point that she would be busy. The boys clammed up immediately. Then, Roxanne pulled Estella's hand away and addressed Lucian, it's late. You guys should go home. You still have to go to work tomorrow. When Lucian heard that, he nodded lightly and got up without taking another look at Estella. He could not stand the sight of how disappointed she was. Did she cry her heart out? Estella's gaze was glued to Roxanne's back, tears rolling down her cheeks uncontrollably. Archie and Benny were equally miserable. They did not expect Roxanne to be so heartless. When they saw that the girl was crying, they went over and consoled her. Don't cry, Essie. Mommy is really busy these few days. You can always come over and play once Mommy is free again, Benny cajoled with a smile, yet his attempt was futile. When Archie saw that Estella was still sobbing, he took out a handkerchief to wipe away her tears as he comforted her. We can still play together at the kindergarten, Essie. Mommy really likes you because you're a good girl, so don't cry. You'll look ugly if you keep crying, and Mommy doesn't like that. Estella stopped and looked at the boy with doubt in her eyes. Yeah. Archie's right, Benny quickly chimed in with a nod. Mommy doesn't like kids who cry. It was not until then that Estella finally held back her tears with much effort. An inexplicable glint shone in Lucian's eyes when he saw how deeply Archie and Benny cared for Estella. Thank you for saying that, he said to the boys as he walked toward them. The 2 children initially wanted to ignore him, but when they remembered how they were partially at fault for making Estella cry because they hurried Lucian home, they evaded the man's gaze with guilt. We're just telling her the truth. They knew that Roxanne loved Estella, but like themselves, she distanced herself from Estella because of Lucian. Instead of answering the boys, Lucian smiled at them and held Estella's hand. This time, the girl did not run away. Say goodbye to Archie and Benny, Essie, he said to her softly. The girl did as she was told and waved at them, still trying to swallow her tears. "Goodbye, Archie. Goodbye, Benny. I'll come again. We can't wait to see you again too." "Bye," the two kids replied, forcing a smile. After sending Estella off at the door and watching the car disappear out of their sight, the boys went back up to Roxanne. They found her staring blankly into the air in the study. She could not stop thinking about how downcast Estella was when she turned her down. Regret ate her up from the inside after the girl left. She had said so herself that the children were innocent. But over and over again, she had hurt Estella because of what happened between her and Lucian. Roxanne was so deep in her thoughts thinking about Estella that she did not even realize the boys were already back. "Mommy!" Archie and Benny whispered carefully as they went closer to her. The look on her face was telling how remorseful she felt. When Roxanne knew she had let her mind wander off, she cracked a stiff smile and stroked their heads. "Is Essie gone?" The boys nodded firmly. "Was she crying her heart out when she left?" she asked out of guilt after some time. Archie and Benny nodded again. She wanted to treat Estella well and make her happy, but she ended up making her cry again. "Don't worry, Mommy. She stopped crying after we talked to her," the children said with a smile, knowing that Roxanne would beat herself up. Roxanne smiled in relief, pulling them into her arms. "Thank you. What would I do without both of you? Essie said that she likes you a lot, Mommy. She also said she'll come again soon," they replied, hugging her back. Roxanne felt comforted when she knew that the boys had taken care of everything. "Take it easy." Over at the Pearson residence, Aubrey had been depressed ever since Lucian chased her out the other day. In the past, Sonia would always take her side and defend her, but she did not that day because there was nothing she could do to change anything. Aubrey despaired when she recalled Sonia's inaction. She was not dumb. After years of waiting for Lucian, she knew in her heart that he was not keen on marrying her. Yet she had always wanted to try her luck believing that Sonia would help her. She had always thought that Lucian would marry her one day as long as she waited for him. However, her hope was crushed when Roxanne returned to the country and Lucian expressed his intention to break off their engagement. After having some time to herself to cool her head off for a day, Aubrey still decided to take the chance again by paying Sonia a visit. Sonia was not expecting her to come by that day when she saw her at the door. But after a short pause, she invited Aubrey in, as she always did. "I'm sorry I didn't let you know in advance. I hope I'm not disturbing," Aubrey said apologetically. Since Sonia felt bad for Aubrey after Lucian wanted to nullify their engagement, and she actually liked Aubrey as a person, she smiled warmly at her and replied, "Don't worry about it. You're almost like a daughter to me, so you can visit anytime. You don't have to be so courteous. Just make yourself at home." A rueful grin crept up on Aubrey's lips. "You know, you used to call me your daughter-in-law, but not anymore." Tears welled up in Aubrey's eyes as she spoke. She paused to wipe away the tears in her eyes as she tried to compose herself. "Mrs. Farwell, I came today to apologize to you in person. I made a lot of mistakes when I was here, and all of you put up with them because of what my family did for Lucian. Now that he wants nothing to do with me, I just hope things end well between us. I just want to say sorry for everything I did. I hope you can forgive me. Aubrey even used her puppy dog eyes on Sonia and played the victim. I hope you understand that I did everything with the best intention for everyone. I took myself as Lucian's wife when I was here, so all the decisions I made were for the family. There were times when my kindness was misunderstood, but I still want you to know that I didn't mean any of it in a bad way. Even if we don't end up becoming a family, I still hope you can forgive me. It broke Sonia's heart to see the young lady like that. Over the years, she had treated Aubrey as her future daughter-in-law. Despite what Aubrey said, Sonia was actually pretty satisfied with everything she did. Personally, she was also taken aback when Lucian suddenly decided to call off the engagement, so every word Aubrey said to her tugged at her heartstring when she was reminded of the time Aubrey had spent with the family. Sonia sat down beside her and held her shoulders. Take it easy, Aubrey. Things are not set in stone yet. The young woman smiled helplessly. Mrs. Farwell, I know Lucian. Since he already made it clear that he is not interested in the engagement, there is not the slightest chance of going back. It's okay. You can still come and visit me if you feel lonely. You're like a mother to me. Sonia felt even more touched when Aubrey said that. She thought for a bit and assured her again, don't worry. No one knows about the breaking of the engagement yet, so there's still room for discussion. I'll talk to Lucian once he gets over his emotion. Although Aubrey felt delighted that she had gotten what she came for, she still put up a pitiful look and nodded reluctantly. She bets he does not know. The pathetic look on Aubrey's face faded the moment she came out of the Farwell residence. Her expression was bitter and spiteful as she got into the car. Noticing her change in expression, Charles chose his words wisely. Where to, Miss Pearson? Aubrey glanced at him coldly from the rear-view mirror. The office. Just as Charles was about to pull off, Aubrey grunted in annoyance. You know what? Just go home. She was not in the mood to deal with the bunch of irritating people at the company. Aubrey had come to Sonia hoping Sonia would talk to Lucian immediately just as she always did whenever Aubrey shed a few tears. Yet Aubrey's trip proved to be fruitless when Sonia simply said she would discuss the matter with Lucian only when he had blown off some steam. What she had promised to do was just not enough because, by the time Lucian cooled down, the news about him calling off the engagement would be made public. That can never happen. Resentment burned in Aubrey's heart. Roxanne Jarvis. It's all your fault. Ever since you came back, all Lucian and Essie can think about is you. I don't care if Essie wants to stay with you, but you can't have Lucian too. I will not let him take your side. Her current predicament reminded her of how things were 6 years ago. Back then, Lucian would give Roxanne the cold shoulder because of her, but things had taken a 180-degree change after Roxanne returned. It was as if they had switched positions. Something must have happened over the past 6 years. Just as Aubrey was caught in a bout of anger, Gina called, and Aubrey picked up with a straight face. How did it go? Did you talk to Mrs. Farwell? Gina asked the moment the call got through. Aubrey's face fell. Yeah. I talked to her, but it didn't make any difference. I'd rather take things in my own hand. Oh, what are you thinking of doing? It seems to me that Lucian has his mind fixed on marrying that woman. I don't think there's anything we can do to change that, Gina answered, slightly surprised by what her daughter said. True. Aubrey gritted her teeth. There's nothing I can do if he's hell-bent on marrying her. Pearson Group is nothing compared to Farwell Group. We're nothing but a small grasshopper compared to them. I don't have what it takes to change his mind. Well, since Essie is the reason why Lucian wants to end the engagement, why not we start with that girl? Gina suggested. Aubrey suddenly had a stroke of genius when her mother gave such a brilliant suggestion. Aubrey. Gina was still waiting for an answer. Aubrey snapped back and quickly replied, "We'll talk after I reach home. Bye." Then she hung up the phone and turned to Charles. "Go to the office and get someone to run a check on Roxanne Jarvis. I want a detailed account of what she's been up to in the past few years. Also, I want to know who the father of her 2 sons is." What Gina had just said reminded Aubrey that she actually knew so little about the 2 boys. She did not even know who their father was. I bet Lucian doesn't know either. Roxanne would not have time to think about Lucian if I were to bring that man back from abroad. Likewise, Lucian will be disgusted by her when he finds out that she's already been taken by another man. Ha! Roxanne Jarvis! You're not getting Lucian if I'm not. One good thing after another. Unbeknownst to Roxanne, Aubrey had begun to plot against her. She was too occupied with the research she had to do. Her busyness was not entirely an excuse to send Estella home. If the children had not insisted that she took a day off because of her injured wrist, she would not have taken a break from her research work. Early the next morning, Roxanne was awakened by a call from her teammate. After a brief conversation, she rushed over to the research institute without even having the time to have a bite of breakfast. The beginning and end phases of a research project were usually the hardest parts. At the start of the project, Roxanne had dedicated so much time to it that she would spend days at the research facility. Since they were then at the final stage of the project, things were picking up again. Colby, who was still assisting Roxanne on the project, was alarmed when he saw the injury on her wrist while they were conducting an experiment. "Dr. Jarvis! Your hand!" Roxanne was so engrossed in her work she had forgotten about her injury. It was not until she trailed Colby's gaze that she was reminded of it, and she smiled faintly, saying, "It's no big deal. It's just a scratch from an activity at my kids' kindergarten." Colby was relieved to hear that it was not anything major. But still, he took over most parts of the experiment that he thought would be too physically demanding for Roxanne while she stood aside and gave him verbal instructions. Their team dynamic was good, and they went on to carry out experiments for almost a week until they finally achieved the results they wanted. When Charles saw how Aubrey's face contorted with malice, he said hastily, "Understood." The whole group in the lab was boisterous, and Roxanne was unequivocally glad that they got the results they intended. Although she was already a practitioner of her own when she was abroad, most of the projects she participated in were under her professor. She was just a nominal independent researcher most of the time, but things were different this time. That was the first ever research that she had directed on her own. "Are you free tonight, Dr. Jarvis?" Colby inquired with a big smile as he walked toward her from the research facility. The hesitation and the wariness in Roxanne's eyes when she heard the question elicited a laugh on Colby's face. "What's with that look?" I bet you forgot that you promised you'll treat all of us to a celebratory meal if the experiment goes well. Everyone is waiting for you to fulfill that promise," he teased. A smile broke out on Roxanne's face. "Ah, all right. I'm sorry. I forgot about it. Tell everyone to meet at the waterfront at 8 tonight, then." Colby nodded and went back into the research facility after that. Not long after he entered, a burst of cheer came from the inside. It seemed that everyone was overjoyed. To them, that was a day worth celebrating because one good thing happened after another. First, they scored a major breakthrough when they completed such a formidable project. Second, Roxanne had agreed to treat everyone to a celebration feast. After Roxanne went back to her office, she asked her assistant to make a reservation for a private dining room at the waterfront before calling Madeline to request her help to take care of Archie and Benny that night. Roxanne had promised the two boys the night before that she would go and pick them up after the project ended. They were elated and even mentioned Estella when they heard the news. Roxanne suddenly felt a pang of guilt in her heart the moment she was reminded of the girl. "Let me send you home." At 8 that night, Roxanne and everyone from the research institute went to the waterfront together. After they were seated in the private room, they proposed a toast to Roxanne. "Dr. Jarvis is a valuable addition to our research institute. Not only did she solve a huge medicinal problem, but she also initiated many projects. We are where we are today because of her." "I can't agree more. To be honest, I thought we would not be able to see this project through, yet we survived thanks to her caliber and courage. She's both a charming and a capable person." Roxanne smiled widely at the compliments. She rose to her feet and looked at them. "Thank you. I'm just doing my part. Thank you for believing in me and cooperating as a team." When she first returned to the country, she was mostly unaware of the situation in the local research field. In fact, she had braced herself for the worst. She did not expect researchers to be that friendly and that everything would turn out so smoothly. "Well, your fame precedes you, Dr. Jarvis. Dr. Galloway said a lot of good things about you before you came, and we were all impressed. Everything he said about you proved to be true in the end when we finally got to meet you," one of the teammates replied. She was certain that her sons must have informed Estella of her return that night. "She's going to be heartbroken now that I can't go home tonight. By the way, Maddie, help me say sorry to Estella if you see her tonight. Tell her I still have something to do over here," Roxanne added when she thought of the girl. Madeline was clueless about why Roxanne wanted to apologize, but she just agreed with a smile without probing further. Colby's expression changed when he heard that, but he quickly composed himself and feigned nonchalance, raising his glass to Roxanne. "I was simply saying the truth." With that said, he lifted his glass and finished everything in one go. Roxanne felt Colby was not himself at that time, but because she could not pinpoint what was it that puzzled her, and since everyone was busy proposing a toast, the thought just slipped her mind. Meanwhile, Colby had been glancing at her from the corner of his eyes. When he saw that she did not seem bothered by what had happened earlier, he heaved a sigh of relief. It was true that he had feelings for Roxanne, yet he knew that she was way out of his league. He only wished to hide his feelings from her until the day he became a man worthy of protecting her. The clock almost struck 10 when their gathering finally ended. Everyone was in a positive mood after the meal because not only did they eat their fill, but they also had a great time with Roxanne. As for Roxanne, because she had received toast after toast during dinner, she ended up feeling tipsy. The alcohol made her swoon as she walked out of the private room. "Let me send you back," Colby said worriedly, looking at her. A mild pain spread in her head, and she frowned. "I'm good. You don't have to. All of you should just go home. It's late. Bye." Then she turned and walked toward the entrance without waiting for Colby's reply. When she was out, she realized the sky was pouring, and many people from the hotel were stranded at the entrance waiting for the rain to stop. Because Roxanne did not have an umbrella and she could not drive, she had no choice but to wait at the entrance together with everyone else while she looked for a driver. Yet it seemed that everyone there was also looking to hire drivers, so Roxanne ended up waiting for a long time. Feeling uneasy. Her change in color did not go unnoticed by Caden, but the man could not understand the reason behind it. When he saw that Lucian had ended the call, he quickly walked over. "Do you have an umbrella? Where's your car? I can send you home first before Mr. Farwell comes. He's going to take a while." Caden gestured to open the umbrella in his hand, but Roxanne stopped him. "It's okay. Someone's picking me up." Caden nodded and just stood beside her quietly after that. Seeing that the man was not going anywhere, Roxanne looked at the rain and hesitated as she distanced herself from him. "The rain is abating. I should go before he comes down." "Mr. Farwell! I thought you," Caden exclaimed. Just as she took the first step into the rain, Lucian was already behind her. Although Roxanne did not know why Caden did not finish his sentence, she was too nervous to turn around to check out what was happening. Just as she was contemplating cancelling her request for a driver and asking Madeline to pick her up, a familiar voice rang out from beside her. "Mr. Farwell, it's raining outside. I have an umbrella, so I'll just wait for you at the hotel entrance." It was Caden. He was standing not far away from Roxanne with a black umbrella in his hand as he spoke respectfully over the phone. It so happened that he looked up when Roxanne turned toward him, and their eyes met. "Ms. Jarvis," he greeted while he was still on the phone. A brief silence came from the other end of the call. Roxanne's face fell. She knew for sure that Lucian had heard that. When she felt cold air engulfing her, she fled into the rain without a second thought. Suddenly, the rain stopped hitting her head. A black umbrella sheltered her, and a strong grip caught her hand, pulling her right back to the hotel entrance. "Are you crazy?" Lucian reprimanded. He knew that Roxanne would try to avoid him when he was on the call with Caden, so he said goodbye to his partners and left in a hurry. As he expected, she was indeed trying to run away. Lucian felt insulted when she would rather walk in the rain than spend time with him. When Roxanne knew there was no getting away, she took a deep breath and looked up at him calmly. "Hi, Mr. Farwell. What a coincidence." Lucian did not know she was drunk at first, but the moment he smelled her breath, a frown appeared on his brows. "Did you drink?" "Yeah. I was having dinner with my colleagues." "I'll send you home," Lucian said, his hand still holding hers. Roxanne tried to break free, but she could not. A look of displeasure crept up her face. No, thanks. Someone's coming for me. I can go back on my own. Let me go, Mr. Farwell. Please. Who are you waiting for? Your driver? I doubt you're getting one so soon, though, Lucian argued candidly, looking at the people around them. Words eluded her, and she quickly thought of something else. I called for one earlier. People are watching, Mr. Farwell. I don't want to cause a scene. Lucian's face looked gloomier than before, and he let her go. Roxanne nodded at him and walked into the rain. Behind her, Lucian ran over in big steps with the umbrella tilting toward her. Your wound is not healed yet. Let me take you there, he shouted in the rain. Roxanne did not turn back but hastened her steps. Slowly. It's slippery, Lucian reminded at the back. Even though Roxanne had an umbrella over her, she was still shivering in the rain because it was pouring cats and dogs. Her thin clothing was not enough to keep her warm. Besides, because Lucian was just right behind her, she kept telling herself to walk faster. Well, I'll walk slowly if you stop following me, she said. Behind her, the man's footsteps gradually came to a complete halt. Without his umbrella, the rain pounded on Roxanne's body mercilessly as she dragged herself to the parking lot. She then sat in the back seat of her own car and waited for the driver. Her mind was a mess. She wondered if God was playing a prank on her. The more she wanted to avoid Lucian, the more she ran into him. Most importantly, the way he treated her made her feel uneasy. Mommy is down with a fever. When Roxanne finally got home, Madeline had already brought Archie and Benny home, and the two kids were playing in the living room. Seeing that Roxanne was drenched, they ran over with worry written all over their faces. Mommy! Did you walk in the rain? Roxanne was exhausted, but she still patted them on their heads and replied, I forgot my umbrella, so I got wet when I was running over to my car. I'll be okay. After asking Lissa to tend to the children, Roxanne went upstairs to take a shower and changed into a new set of clothes. Then, she came back down again to play with the boys before hitting the hay herself. Since she had overextended herself in the past 2 days, Roxanne felt completely drained when she finally lay on her bed. She fell asleep right away, but in the middle of the night, she was awakened by a fever. In a daze, she got out of bed to pour herself a glass of water, but her legs gave way the moment she stood up, and she fell right back onto the mattress. A frown appeared on her brows as she slowly regained consciousness. I think I'm running a fever. Since it was already midnight, she did not want to wake anyone up. I'll just sleep it off. It'll get better tomorrow. With that thought, she fell back into a slumber. When morning came, Archie and Benny rose early because they felt excited. Lissa and Madeline had been sending them to school because Roxanne had been busy for the past few days. When Roxanne was finally home again, they looked forward to her bringing them to school. However, they were disappointed when she did not appear even after breakfast. Seeing that they were almost running late, they ran upstairs and knocked on her door, but no one answered. The children ran back downstairs to call for Lissa. Ms. Lane, Mommy is not responding to us. Could you come and have a look? Lissa was frightened when she heard that, so she quickly made her way up and opened the door with a key. Once she opened it, Archie and Benny rushed into the room only to see Roxanne lying weakly in her bed. Her eyes were shut, her cheeks were hot and red, and her lips were parched. It was obvious she was down with a high fever. "Mommy!" the kids cried out. When Roxanne still did not respond, Lisa went forward. She touched Roxanne's forehead, and her face darkened. "This is way worse than the last time she was sick. What should I do now? It doesn't seem like she will wake up anytime soon, and we can't send her to the hospital either." Lisa was on pins and needles. When Archie saw this, he took a quick glance at the clock and said to Lisa, "Ms. Lane, could you help Benny and me apply for a leave of absence today? We'll take care of Mommy at home." Lisa nodded immediately and went to make a call to Pippa. Then she took a wet towel and put it on Roxanne's forehead to help cool her down. As for the boys, they stayed by their mother's side for a long time until she finally came back to her senses. Roxanne felt that she had fallen into a deep, deep sleep. She could not wake herself up although she wanted to. It was the voices of her children that eventually plucked her out of her reverie. "Mommy!" the children cried out and went closer to her the instant they saw her moving. Roxanne was stunned at first, but she gradually registered her surroundings and wanted to sit up. "Sorry, I didn't mean to sleep in." She was still thinking about sending Archie and Benny to school when the children pushed her back into bed. "Mommy, you're sick. We've already asked for leave to stay at home to look after you today," they said in all seriousness. It was only then that Roxanne realized how sick she was. Roxanne felt touched that the children cared so much for her. Going to her house. Meanwhile, Estella had been waiting at the kindergarten entranceway before school started that morning, hoping she could see Roxanne, Archie, and Benny. The brothers had told her the day before that Roxanne was finally coming home and would be fetching them to school. The night before, she had also waited for Roxanne eagerly, but in the end, she only saw Madeline. She felt disappointed at first, yet when she knew that Roxanne had a message for her, she was comforted because it meant Roxanne still thought about her. That was the reason why she was not altogether upset, and she was looking forward to seeing Roxanne the next day. However, not only did she not see Roxanne, but she also did not see the two brothers at school. That made her extremely sad. "Essie, come on in. It's almost time for her school." Pippa did not call out until school was about to start since she did not know what the kid was doing. Estella pouted and shook her head in refusal. "What's going on?" Pippa asked. Ever since the child got lost in the mountain, the teacher had been paying extra attention to her because she felt sorry for the child. Estella looked far away without answering. She was hoping the car she had waited for would show. "They are coming to school." The girl stood waiting until the school bell rang, but there was still no sign of the people she wanted to meet. Since Pippa could not get her to go in, she stood with the girl at the entrance and asked the other teachers to take over her class. The recent trauma had made Estella lose her sense of security, so when she thought of Roxanne's attitude toward her and the boy's absence, she started tearing up. "Does this mean Ms. Jarvis doesn't want me anymore? Did she transfer Archie and Benny to another school? They almost went to another school last time." Pippa was worried when she saw that the girl was about to break down. She bent down and tried to comfort her. "What's the matter, Essie? Why don't you tell me what you're upset about? I can help you. Estella bit her lip and took out her notebook before writing, Archie and Benny. Pippa finally understood what Estella wanted. Ah, she was waiting for the boys. But she doesn't usually wait for them even when she comes to school early, though. Pippa could not wrap her head around what Estella was thinking, yet she still patiently explained everything to the girl. Archie and Benny are not coming today. Their mommy is sick, so they asked to stay home for a day, she said, patting Estella's head. Why don't we go in first? They'll be here tomorrow. Estella looked upset when she found out that Roxanne was ill. She shook her head and retreated a few steps, trying to dodge Pippa's hand. The teacher was confused, yet before she could even ask the girl anything, Estella turned and ran toward the Farwell family's car parked beside the road. "Essie!" Pippa shouted as she ran after the girl. After Estella went missing the other time, Lucian had arranged for a driver to follow her around just in case she ran away again. The driver was stupefied when she saw Estella running into the car with her teacher chasing her from behind. The next thing he knew, Estella opened her mouth and spoke out of the blue. "Go to Ms. Jarvis' house," she ordered in a compellingly cute voice. The driver was stunned. A smile broke out on his face, and he nodded before driving away, ignoring the teacher who was chasing after them at the back. "She came alone, Ms. Estella. Have you told Mr. Farwell about this?" the driver asked. It did not occur to him that he should ask until they were on the way. When his question was met with dead silence, the driver knew he was in deep trouble. She must have run away without telling him. "I'm good as dead if Mr. Farwell finds out about it." Thinking, the driver spared her a hesitant glance from the mirror. "How about I call him?" "No," Estella said, shaking her head. "I don't want to tell him. He's the reason why Ms. Jarvis refused to let me stay the other time. She doesn't like Daddy. She won't even let me in if Daddy's enter title." Since Estella was adamant about it, the driver did not push her. "I'll just call Mr. Farwell when we reach." Soon enough, they arrived at Roxanne's house. Estella jumped out of the car right away, sprinted over to the door, and rang the doorbell. Since everyone was upstairs looking after Roxanne, no one heard the doorbell. The violent dinging slowed down as time passed when no one came to get the door. Estella was on the verge of crying again. It was not until Lissa came downstairs to make Roxanne some oatmeal that she heard the doorbell. She was perplexed when she saw the child at the door. "Essie! Are you here alone?" "Ms. Lane," she cried. "Did you come alone?" Lissa inquired again. Estella nodded furiously before poking her head in to see if Roxanne or the two boys were around. But to her dismay, she saw no one. In front of her, Lissa hesitated for a while before stepping aside to let her in. Having witnessed Roxanne sending Lucian and Estella away, Lissa was unsure about Roxanne's attitude toward them. But seeing that the girl had come alone, Lissa thought it would not be good to just send her away. Hence, she asked her to wait in the living room while she informed Roxanne about her visit. "Did she come alone?" Roxanne asked in confusion. She looked sickly with her face flushed and pale lips cracked. Lissa nodded. "She's waiting for you downstairs. Should I let her come up, or should I contact Mr. Farwell and ask him to get her?" Because Roxanne was not feeling well, she had been taking longer to respond to everything. Before she could answer, Archie and Benny had beaten her to it. They knew how much Estella missed Roxanne, and since she had come alone, they figured they should just let her see Roxanne, or else she might feel so disheartened that she ran away again. On top of that, they were well aware that it was Lucian whom Roxanne was angry with, not Estella. When they saw that Roxanne did not disagree, they quickly made a case for the girl. "Mommy, just let her in. She must have found out about it from Ms. Ward. That's why she came all the way here." Roxanne frowned and finally nodded. She could not bring herself to let Estella wait all alone down there whenever the scene of the poor girl curling into a human ball in the pit flashed in her mind. Since the boys had gotten a green light from Roxanne, they went downstairs to bring Estella up. She left by herself Ms. Jarvis. At the sight of Roxanne lying on the bed with a sickly complexion, Estella felt tears welling up in her eyes again. Estella's voice made Roxanne's heart melt. Seeing the little girl come running toward her bedside, she forced a smile. "I'm fine. Don't worry, Essie." Like a pitiful kitten, Estella leaned by the bedside and stared at Roxanne with teary eyes. Estella's gaze calmed Roxanne down significantly. "Why are you here alone?" Roxanne asked in a gentle voice. "Ms. Ward says you're sick." Estella was close to tears. Roxanne nodded and reached out to caress the little girl's head. "Thank you for caring so much about me, Essie." Similarly, Estella also stretched her arm out, intending to touch Roxanne's forehead. Roxanne had let them do a fever check by touching her forehead the other time. She could still vividly recall how Roxanne's forehead was burning then. When Roxanne realized what Estella was trying to do, she tried to get up from the bed and move her head closer to the young girl. Nevertheless, unable to muster any strength in her arm, she had only propped herself up a little before she fell back onto the bed again. Worry was written all over Estella's face. Roxanne smiled apologetically. "If you're worried, how about you get on the bed too?" That was not the first time Estella went to Roxanne's room. In fact, she had stayed there for a long time before. Yet she still felt nervous. It had been forever and a day since Estella saw the beautiful woman. Besides, she was ill. Estella removed her shoes without hesitation and climbed up onto the bed to touch Roxanne's forehead lightly. Panic filled the girl's eyes when her palm came into contact with Roxanne. The other time when Ms. Jarvis had a fever, Daddy had to bring her to the hospital. She stayed there for a night before she recovered. But this time, Ms. Jarvis' forehead feels so much warmer. But she doesn't like Daddy and doesn't want Daddy here. Meanwhile, Lucian was having a meeting in the office when he suddenly received a call from Pippa. Catching a glimpse of the caller ID, he furrowed his brows. He got his assistant to preside over the meeting in his place and headed outside to answer the call. "Essie left by herself, Mr. Farwell," Pippa reported to Lucian anxiously. The man's expression abruptly darkened when he heard that news. "What happened?" Pippa was on tenterhooks. "She got into the Farwell family's car. I believe she wants to visit Ms. Jarvis. She asked me why Archie and Benny didn't come to school today. I told her Ms. Jarvis fell sick, and she immediately turned around and got into the car again. She likes Ms. Jarvis a lot." She dared not continue her sentence, as that was merely her conjecture. Deep down, she was concerned about Estella's whereabouts too. The fact that Estella had gotten in their car made Lucian slightly relieved. However, having learned from Pippa that Roxanne was sick, he frowned. "What happened to Ms. Jarvis?" Pippa responded, "I heard she's running a fever. Archie and Benny are taking care of her at home." As soon as she finished speaking, Lucian's deep voice sounded from the other end. "I got it. Please excuse Essie from school today too." "Thank you." After Pippa agreed to the request, the man concluded the call and called. "Caden over. I'm heading over to Roxanne's. Help me get Dr. Ellswick. The culprit." When the doorbell rang again, Archie and Benny instinctively turned to look at Estella. They quickly stopped Lissa from going downstairs to open the door and did it themselves instead. "Only one person will come to our house at this hour, and he must be the one looking for Essie." Opening the door, Archie and Benny did not seem surprised at the sight of the man dressed crisply in a suit standing outside. Behind him, there was also a man holding a medical kit. The boys figured from the latter's appearance that he was a doctor. "Where's Essie?" Seeing that it was Archie and Benny, Lucian felt a headache coming. The boys' prejudice toward him, though unfathomable, was deep-rooted. "I guess I won't be able to get in there easily today." And as he had expected, the two boys blocked the entire path and stared at him with full alert. "Why are you here? Mommy surely doesn't want to see him. And now that she is sick, it will only make her more upset if she sees him now. That might even affect her current condition." Sonny Ellswick was the family doctor of the Farwell family. He had impressive medical skills but basically only worked for the family. Caden knew Lucian's motive for calling Sonny was to ask the latter to treat Roxanne. He was undoubtedly getting increasingly perplexed about Lucian's feelings toward Roxanne but still went ahead to agree to the instructions. Sonny arrived relatively quickly. Lucian had waited for his arrival before heading to Roxanne's with him. Having known Roxanne's attitude toward him lately, he figured she would possibly not let him into the house if he had gone there alone. Hence, it was more than wise to bring a doctor along. Archie's and Benny's eyes glistened with conviction. Lucian could see through Archie's and Benny's minds. He scrunched his brows helplessly and uttered, "I heard your mommy is sick, so I brought a doctor along." Finishing his words, he stood aside to make way for Sonny to step forward. "This is Dr. Ellswick, the family doctor of the Farwell family," Lucian introduced. Sonny flashed a warm smile and slightly nodded at Archie and Benny. The two boys exchanged a look and turned back with a suspicious expression. "How did you find out that mommy is sick?" In a deep voice, Lucian responded, "Ms. Ward gave me a call earlier, informing me that Essie came to find your mommy." Archie and Benny appeared a little hesitant. After all, as much as they did not want to let Lucian step inside, he had brought a doctor along with him. Seeing that Archie and Benny seemed to have relented, the man continued his persuasion by using Roxanne's condition as an excuse this round. "Your mommy only has you guys to take care of her. I'm sure she hasn't gone to the hospital yet. Why don't you let the doctor take a look at her? Perhaps she'll recover faster too." Dr. Ellswick has impressive medical skills. The raging emotions in Archie and Benny began to calm down at the mention of Roxanne's condition. From morning till now, they had only acted according to Lissa's instructions to help Roxanne change the towel on her forehead frequently. Yet, there was no sign of the fever subsiding. Moreover, they had no way of taking Roxanne to the hospital since she had no energy and had been lying in bed all day. This doctor has a bright smile. He seems to be a friendly and reliable person. After some hesitation, Archie and Benny decided to put Roxanne's health first. Though reluctant, they turned and headed upstairs, leaving the door open for Lucian and Sunny. Heaving a sigh of relief, Lucian led Sunny and followed behind the two boys. Upstairs, having not seen Archie and Benny return after a while, Roxanne was about to ask Lissa to head downstairs to check on them when they appeared by the door. Noticing the expression on their faces, Roxanne immediately knew who the visitor was. Other than Lucian, no one can make the kids pull such a long face. But then again, what made him come here at this hour? She figured she was running a fever because she was drenched in the rain last night. And the culprit of her predicament was none other than Lucian. Wasn't I clear enough? I hope he can keep his distance from me. Yet now he's appearing when I'm so weak. Roxanne could not think of what kind of attitude she should put on in front of Lucian within such a short time. In her heart, she kept praying hard that he was merely there to fetch Estella home. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.